All right. Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Von Holtz at home, trying to help all of us get through this tricky time with education and the like. This is the first video that I'll be putting out that is lesson oriented. Uh, it's the first time I've done this. I'm going to do my best. And hopefully, as we go along, things will improve. I imagine that the first one won't be great. I'm still working out some technical difficulties, but I wanted to make sure that I get in the habit of doing this so that you guys, you students, can at least have access to something to push your thinking a little bit rather than just keeping reviewing the things that you already know. And so that you can have a little bit of guidance. And if you do have questions and concerns, you can actually reach out to me. We can talk over uh, whatever voice conferencing that we want to, or phone, just to push our thinking in our education. And hopefully this way enough of you can access this and do the work on your own so that you're getting better, but I can also meet with people individually so that they can improve even further during this time of no schooling. And we'll see how it goes. I'm already predicting a few technical difficulties. The webcam I currently have, as I was trying to get some of the text to look at the book, it was coming in a little blurry, so I'll make sure that I tell you what page it's on and do my best to read the words out loud so you can see them. And hopefully in the future I'll figure out how to get the actual book on the computer screen so that you can see it. The way this is going to go is you're going to see, I'll bring it up right now, whoa, the sheet that we would use in class with some guided questions and vocabulary that we would normally use in the classroom, and you would work on either by yourself or with partners, or we discuss in group. And I'm going to go through the questions. I'm going to ask them to you, and then you'll just pause the video after I ask a question, and you can either type your own response in the Google document that you'll have through Google Classrooms, or you can write it down on a blank piece of paper, or if you have a printer and you want to print the page out and write it down and then scan it so that it can be submitted. All of those things are possible, whatever works best for you at home. I'm going to be typing in my responses because that's what works best here. And again, this will be an experiment as we go along. If everyone has suggestions or questions as we're doing this, feel free to reach out. You have my personal number, and your parents can contact me. And I hope this will be good for everybody. And so we're actually going to pick up right where we left off with Tolliver's Secret. We had just finished reading chapter 5, and now we're moving on to chapter 6. If you haven't yet, before you go into this lesson, reading lesson 27, right here, you should either go back to the video that I put up for chapter 6 and read along silently as I read that out loud to you, and making sure that you understand the big points that happen in the chapter. Or you should read it on your own and make sure that you have a solid gist statement that shows that you understand the big happenings and events that happened in this chapter. If you have not done that yet, then what we're going to do right now is not going to be, you're likely not going to be able to do it. And so that's what you need to do first. And as soon as you've done that, you can then bring this video back, and we're going to go right from the beginning. Right, here we go. Whoa. So, today's reading lesson number 27. Our objective is we're going to describe a character using specific details from the texts. And the reason why we do this is because authors use details about characters, settings, and events to show readers and characters' important traits. Good readers use these details to notice and describe characters and how they respond to other words. In other words, the reason why we're doing this is because we read books, we read stories, and we listen and watch movies because we learn from the characters, and the details that we learn about the characters help us understand ourselves better. They help us learn the lessons that the author wants us to learn, and being able to describe these characters helps us understand them and the characters they interact with better. Today we're going to be focusing on two characters that are not main characters in the book. We're going to be focusing on Dow and Higgins, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And your exit ticket is going to be able to explain how Dow is like. and also why he is important to this story, even though he is not a main character. And we'll see that even though characters aren't necessarily main characters, that they can reveal things about the main characters so we can learn more about them. So before we dive in, you can take a look at the vocabulary words, as we always do. I'll read through them and give a little bit of an explanation if they are needed. If you read the chapter already, as you should have, and these words were confusing, you can always come to this part or look on these vocabulary words on the document before you read so that you have a better chance of understanding. Okay, so the first word is spindly, which just means tall. It's an adjective that means tall, skinny, and usually frail or weak-looking. The second word is woebegone, which is an adjective that means full of distress. Someone who's woebegone, it could have been someone who recently lost a family member or a friend that passed away. They're just full of anxiety. They're not feeling very, very good. The third word is an adverb, forlornly. It means unhappily. If someone's doing something in a way that they don't really want to do it. Sometimes you're asked to put the dishes away and you don't want to put those dishes away. So you do it, but you do it in a forlorn way or forlornly. You're doing it, but you don't really want to. Number 4, the word is pry. This is a verb. It means to move, lift, or open with something that acts as a lever. Anytime that something is locked and you're trying to lift it up with a piece of wood and click it open, that is what prying means. The word defy, number 5, is a verb that means to refuse or to obey. To refuse to obey, meaning to not listen, to not obey. Again, when you're told to do something that you don't want to do, and you say, no, I'm not going to do it. That's defying. Number 6, the word is rogue. The word rogue is a person who is naughty or full of mischief. There's someone who doesn't follow all the rules. They get up to their own trouble. They can often have questionable character and try to get away with things that they're not supposed to. Number 7, the word is squad, and this is the smallest unit of military personnel. I know some of us use the word squad to describe our group of friends, which is true. You can still have your squads that roll deep, but in this case, it's in the military, in the army, people are organized into sections so that they can be given orders. Squad is the smallest unit of military people. It's usually made up of about 10 to 15, sometimes up to 50 people. The next word is company. And the company is a military unit smaller than a regiment, but larger than a squad. And so, again, connected to squad, the squad might be between 20 and 50 people. A company is more probably between 200 to 2,000 people, just the way the army is organized. Number 9 is sloop, and that is a sailboat that has one mast and sails that reach from one side of the boat to the other. It should be one side of the boat. Mr. Von Holtz made a typo. Didn't change it. Sorry, guys. I'm going to do it right now. Side of the boat to the other. It's a small sailboat. It has just one sail. And number 10, the word is stern. And that's the rear or back part of a boat. And so sometimes the word stern means very strict and sometimes angry. But in this case, stern just means the back part of a boat. The bow is the front and the stern is the back. Right? And as always, we'll dive into our activation to get our brain thinking. This will be the first time we do this, but after I read the question, I'll say now's the time that you can pause the video. And when I say that, just pause the video. And that means you're going to have as much time as you need to answer the question yourself. Or if you're working with siblings or with your parents, you can take the time to think about and talk about the question there, just like we would in class. And then, like I said, either write it down on a piece of paper, write it in your book, or if you can, type it into the document that's on your computer. So in today's reading, Ellen faces unexpected problems. And what is it like when that happens? I'll give an example. So you may pause the video. And now you're back. And I'm sure all of us can relate to this right now. Many of us are expected to be in school, and right now we're not. We're having unexpected problems of where to find enough food to get through the day, how we can keep learning, how we can keep playing even though we can't go outside. And so it's sometimes when we face unexpected problems, it's very frustrating. But it also provides opportunities for us to think and be creative. I'm relating to that right now. This unexpected problem that I want my students to learn and become better readers and thinkers. but I don't get to see them in the classroom. So I'm trying to creatively solve the problem by making these videos so that I can reach out and you guys can learn from me while you're at home. Right. So again, going to focus on our objective, which is we are going to describe a character using specific details from the text. And again, this is important because learning and being able to describe characters that are not main characters can help us understand the main characters even better. Most of these thinking questions are going to lead right toward being able to do that objective at the exit ticket at the end. We're describing how Tao is like. Just like we do in class, if you actually want to start with the exit ticket, that's fine. You can begin doing that, making sure you check it with the criteria for success. Or you can go through the thinking questions that will help guide you there. I'm going to go through each thinking question and then go through the exit ticket. But again, after each thinking question, I'll say, now you can pause the video, you can do the thinking question on your own, and then I'll come back in to explain the kind of thinking you probably should have done. Right. So, the first question asks something important to think about is why does the author give the British soldiers different personalities? The author could have made all the British soldiers the same or not even described any of them, but for a particular reason, the author decided to give them different personalities. I don't think this really requires a bunch of text information. It's more of just thinking outside. So right now you can pause the video. All right, and you're back. Like I said, I don't think this takes a lot of in the text thinking. I think we have to think like an author. We've been discussing a lot about perspectives this entire report period. And even though certain people might be part of the patriots, or they might be part of the loyalists, or they might be neutral and want to stay out of it, even though they all might be on the same side, they all have different reasons for being there. And so the author wanted to make sure that the British soldiers weren't all the same, to show that even though people are on the same team or on the same side, that they're still all very different and want very different things, that everyone is unique. And so that's the response that I'm going to get. The author wanted to show that even though people might be on the same team, everyone has their own thoughts and ideas and reasons. We'll just say thoughts and ideas about what they are doing and why. Right? It's just showing. It shows that everyone is unique, no matter what group they belong to. Man, the typing on this is bad. Right. That one doesn't directly align to our objective, but it does help us just kind of think about why the author would do this. Why would he create these two different characters? Sorry, why she would create these two different characters. Yeah. Now, these ones, the next four all lead directly to our objective, describing Tao. A lot of this will be discussing Tao and Higgins, and so it'll line up really nicely where we can think about Tao and Higgins throughout this. We're going to actually describe Higgins together on number 5, and then when it comes to the exit ticket, instead of doing what we did for Higgins, we'll do it for Tao. So far, what do we know about Tao and Higgins? Well, based on the text, well, actually, before I say anything, pause your video and think about this for yourself. And now that you're back, let's talk about it. Based on the text, we know that Tao and Higgins are both British soldiers, that they are serving in New York and fighting there. And those are the big kind of ideas that we got from them, that is their job. I'm actually going to go down to our criteria for success for a second. When we're describing these people, these are kind of the things that we want to focus on. We want to notice the details about their identity, their age, their job, and their appearance. We want to give details that repeat to show their usual feelings. We want to tell why they're important to the story. And then we want to make sure that all these details are coming straight from the text. Some of these I'll show directly from the text, and others we can paraphrase. And some details are more important than others. But I want to show you from the text now. And you can look on with me, or you can look in your own text go. I'm going to change to the camera. And like I said, it's going to be a little blurry. But on page 70, okay, you can see right here, it says, he was a husky man with dirty fringe of scraggly hair beneath his black hat. She couldn't take her eyes from his large nose. It was as big and red as a sweet potato. And then Dow goes on to talk, and he says, his fat cheeks stood when he spoke, and his nose looked as if it were anchored fast. And then right after that, that was describing Dow, says, there's a sad-faced soldier who sat slumped over his side. His mouth was drooped at the corners and looked as tired and woebegone as his eyes. And so we get the physical description of those two soldiers right there. I'll just actually put the camera down here. Blackness. We know that they are both soldiers. We know that Dow is heavier and seems a bit angry already, while Higgins is looks. He says, the author says that he has sad eyes, that he looks woebegone or full of stress, and so that is what I'm going to put here. We know that. Separate this. We know that Dow and Higgins are both soldiers in the British Army. Dow is heavier. I'm going to go back to the text again because I don't remember exactly what the author said. With a dirty fringe of scraggly hair beneath his black hat. And he had a big nose. Right. Whoa. With scraggly hair and a big nose. And Higgins is sadder looking, with tired eyes and a frown. Yeah, that's what we know about them so far. Now, as always, we can tell more about characters and how they act toward each other or toward other people. And so how do Dow and Higgins act toward Ellen? This we see a bunch. I'm going to show a couple examples right now. Pause the video and think about this for yourself. Now that you're back, I have a couple examples to show how the characters treat Ellen. First, the very first interaction we see, Higgins says, "Oh, don't pester the boy, Dow." And is a little Laurie says, "I've got a boy back home in London who looks like you. What's your name?" And this shows that already Higgins is treating Ellen kindly. He tells Dow not to bother her, and also lets her know that she reminds him of his own son back home. Later on, we get some examples of how Dow treats her. Right here, Dow says on page 74, he says, "I could smell that good fresh bread when you stood there on the dock," said Dow as he slapped her hands away. "I said to myself, that boy will be happy to share his bread with a soldier of the king." And then Ellen says, "But it's from my grandfather's friend," cried Ellen. "Please give it back to me." And then Dow says, "Too bad for your grandfather's friend." And Dow grunts as he fumbled awkwardly with a knot in a kerchief. So Dow is trying to take the bread from her, even though she says no. And he treats her very rudely and disrespectfully by trying to take her bread. And so, going back to our question then, how do Dow and Higgins act toward Ellen? Dow treats her rudely by trying to take her bread, even though she refuses to give it to him. Man, him. And we can quote exact evidence from the text if we'd like. to prove our thinking even better. To save a little bit of time, I'm not going to do that right here. I'll likely do at least one piece of evidence in the exit ticket. But we're giving specific enough details that paraphrasing is probably found here. And since the question doesn't specifically ask for evidence from the text, then we're going to do okay. Higgins, on the other hand, treats her very kindly by telling Dow to leave her alone and telling her that she reminds him of his son back home. Right. Right, so that tells us a lot about Dow and Higgins already. Dow seems like a pretty rude person, and Higgins seems more like a much kindly soldier. They seem to be very different from one another, even though they're both soldiers. Right. Now, we saw how they treat her. Now, how do they feel about her? This is important, because this will show why they're important to the story. So again, take a minute right now to pause, think, and answer this question on your own. And now that you're back, let's discuss it. As always, I'm going to go back into the text to look for some details that would give me some ideas about how both these characters feel about her. And some of the details are details that we've already used, but we can find other ones too, because there's many of them. And so on page 75, we'll see this. This is Dow speaking. Again, I apologize for the blurriness. It says, Dow's fat jaw shook with anger. Why, you little rascal, he snarled as he tried to pry her arms loose. Give me back that bread. And then as Ellen says no, he goes, give me back that bread, and he grunts and pulled at her pigtail. And so this shows that Dow is really annoyed and angered by Ellen because she refuses to give the bread to him that he thinks he should have. So why don't we answer that part first? We'll say how Dow feels about her. Dow is frustrated and angered by Ellen because he thinks that she should give him the bread. Give him her bread. And she keeps refusing. Higgins, let's look back again into the text to see how Higgins feels. Hope that's not making anybody dizzy. If you look on page, I think some good evidence for it is on page 79. And here where I underline it says, Higgins nudged her with his sharp elbow. Not bad, Tolliver. You're a spunky little rogue, just like my Tom back home. And so this is one of many examples where Higgins shows that he's kind of proud of her, or that he likes that she stood up to Dow, and that she reminds him of his son back home. So he thinks fondly of her, or he likes her because she doesn't let Dow push her around. So Higgins likes Ellen. Oop. Sorry. Because she stands up to Dow. Make sure Dow is capitalized because it's his name. And she has a lot of spunk and energy. She reminds him, we said this before, of his son Tom back home, who we've seen from the text he misses very much. Tom back home, whom he misses very much. Right. And so now that we've answered all of these questions, we can kind of put our thoughts together to actually do the final job here, which is describing Higgins. Again, if we look at our criteria for success down here in our exit ticket, we're going to see that we want to give details about the character's identity, such as their age, their job, and their appearance. We want to show things that repeat. We want to tell why the character is important to the story, and we want to list accurate details from the text to support the description. I think we've found answers to these two, and on the bottom, the fourth one as well. We haven't really talked much about why the character is important, so That's something that I'll give you a sec to think about and talk about on your own. And then when I answer it, I'll explain more about why I think the character is important. So let's start with Higgins. Let's look at what we already said. We said that he is he's a soldier in the British Army. He is sadder looking, with tired eyes and a frown. So that's something that we can add in here. So Higgins is a soldier in the British Army. He is older. Probably it seems like he's middle-aged because he's fighting and has a son back home. He is middle-aged and is sad-looking with sad eyes and a frown. Yep. And we can describe more about what he looks like, but I don't think it's totally important. How does he act toward Ellen? The way he treats other people? It seems that he is a kind person, because even though he doesn't know if Ellen is a friend or enemy, he still tells, he still tells Dao to leave her alone and doesn't try to take her bread. He likes her a lot because she stands up to Dao and reminds him of his son back home. Now, we've done most of the main things. We gave details about the character's identity and their job, their appearance. We showed the things that they do to show their actions and how they feel. These details are from the text. They are supported. But we haven't talked about why the character is important to the story. So right now, again, pause your video. Think about why you think Higgins is important to the story. And when you come back, I'll describe what I think. I think Higgins is important to the story because it shows that even though the British were the Patriots' enemies, that not all of them were bad people. A lot of times when wars happen, people can say that one side is good and one side is bad, but we've talked about a lot that what side you think is good or what side you think is bad depends on what side you're on. And so Higgins is important to the story because it shows Ellen that these British that they are fighting against are people too. So Higgins is important to the story because it shows Ellen that the soldiers in the British Army are people too. They're not all just evil bad guys. And I spelled British wrong, so I want to fix it. Great. I think as you read along, you'll find actually that Higgins is important for other reasons in the story, but at this point, Ellen's first meeting him, and this is what his importance shows. Okay. Now, to show that you've practiced all these skills, we're going to put it together and do the same thing that we did with Higgins, but this time we're doing it with Dao. Explain what he is like and why he is important to the story. Okay. Just in the past, like I said, it says give details to support your response. In our answers, we've been detailed enough that we can paraphrase. We don't really need to give specific evidence from the text. So right now, pause the video again and take the time to answer this question on your own. When you come back, I'll go through it together so that you can see what a strong answer would look like. Excellent. Here we go. Again, always a good idea to look at our criteria for success to let us know what a good answer would look like. And many of these things we've already answered at the top. We know that Dao, if we look back here, is he's a soldier in the British Army. He is heavier with scraggly hair and a big nose. So let's add that in. Dao is a soldier in the British Army. He is heavier with scraggly hair and a big nose. Again, there's a lot more details that we could give here, but they're not necessarily important to the story, so I'm not going to include them. All right, let's get some details that repeat, that show the character's usual actions or feelings. And like we said up here, you could say that he's pretty rude because he's trying to take Ellen's bread even though she refuses to give it to him. And Ellen makes him angry and frustrated for that reason. So he seems to be a rude person because he drags Ellen onto the boat and tries to take her bread, even though she refuses. Ellen makes him angry and frustrated because he doesn't like that she is standing up to him. He also believes that he can take what he wants. Right. So that does our first and second points. These details are from the text, and now just like with Higgins, we want to tell why the character is important to the story. We haven't really talked much about it. And so right now, again, if you've already answered this, wonderful. If you haven't, pause the video again, think about it. And then when you come back, I'll explain. And at your back. When we think about why a character is important, especially these side characters, we want to think about what they show us about the main character. Up until this point, Ellen hasn't really stood up to anyone in the story. When her grandfather and her mother tell her what to do, she does it. She's scared at first, but she kind of does without pushing back. Especially with Dicey, instead of standing up to her, she runs away and goes to a different well to get her water. And so throughout the whole story so far, Ellen hasn't really been able to stand up to someone who has power over here. She does it a little bit with the boys who take her bread early on, but she stands up by running away from them. First chasing after them, but then running away. And so that's the first kind of hint that we get. She's brave and can stand up for herself, but standing up to this big, scary soldier like this shows that she's very, very brave and that she can stand up for herself. And so that's why Tao is important to the story. It reveals to us that Ellen is indeed actually very brave and that she has strength inside of her that she didn't even know she had. So Tao is important to the story because when Ellen stands up to him, it shows us that she is very brave and has a strength inside of her that she doesn't really think that she has. Tao is the first, when she stands up to Tao, it's the first time she really shows a lot of bravery against someone who has a lot of power over her. Excellent. And so if your response was something like that, then you've done very well. You described Tao and you described why he was important to the story. In class, we don't often get to the closing thoughts, but I know that they're important. I'm actually not going to type them out because I can only make a video so long and I don't want to run out of time. And so these are just thoughts that you can have. I'll say what I think, and then you can talk more about it if you want. Ellen shows that she is a fighter in this chapter from what we said about Tao. She stands up to Tao and doesn't let him take her bread away from her, even though she can be at risk. It shows that she's got a lot of bravery and that even if she encounters hard problems, she's going to work hard to fix them. And then the second, what does Ellen learn from all the problems that happen in this chapter? She learns a lot of things. She learns that even if you, at first, your plan doesn't go the way you want it to, you can find a different plan. She finds that the problems actually create an opportunity for her to be brave and to stand up for herself. And I think she also learns that once you start doing things that are hard, hard things get easier. She was, when she first stood up to the boys that took her bread, that was kind of step one. And now that she's done that one thing, she feels more confident in herself that shows she can stand up for herself in the future too. So I think she learns a lot from these problems that happen in this chapter. Excellent. Well, thank you all for coming along with the first video. I hope that this was clearly organized. And as I said, I'm going to be trying my best to improve in the future. If you have questions about logistics, about how these things are going to work, how to log on to Google Classrooms, how to submit your work, or any also just suggestions about what you think would be helpful or things that you liked or didn't like about the video, please reach out to me so that this can be as beneficial as possible to everybody. Hey, stay sane, stay clean, social distance, and I'll see you. Well, I won't see you, but you'll see me on lesson 28. Bye.